Paul, thank you for joining me. A little bit of context about myself. My name is Will Stover. I was recently a student in a marriage and family therapy program located in Seattle. And now I'm beginning the process of that full licensure, starting off with my associate, and I'm working in Seattle. Um, and I'm joined by Dr. Teresa McDowell, Dr. Carmen Knudson-Martin, and Dr. Maria Bermudez. Um, Dr. McDowell's and Knudson-Martin are both Professor Emerita at Lewis and Clark University, and Dr. Bermudez is an associate professor at the University of Georgia, and I'm here to be able to discuss their work, the third edition of their text, Socioculturally Attuned Family Therapy, applying third order thinking to theory and practice. So thank you y'all for joining me. Happy to be able to discuss this with y'all. For context, I just have a few questions about the new edition of y'all's book. Specifically, to tee it up, why did y'all write the book itself, right?
So originally, we wrote it because all three of us were noticing that in the field in general, and with the students we work with, and even ourselves, that there was a growing sense of social awareness and broader social context, but there was a pretty big gap between knowing and understanding and doing. So how you actually could apply these ideas that were emerging uh, was difficult for us and for our students to understand how to do that. And the models that we have traditionally used in family therapy were developed in a different era, and they did not necessarily, they had a lot of great stuff on power and context, all that, but they didn't necessarily integrate in the sort of greater social awareness that has been being built in the field. So we wanted to integrate um, those ideas and those theories into everyday practice and into each model, so that as family therapists learn these models, they can think about how to apply them in the contemporary context with a greater sense of social awareness.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that. And um, I mean, I've gone through the text several times, right, with each new edition, with the first edition and second edition, and now hopefully the third, right? You mentioned a few concepts within y'all's text that I think would be really important to share here to folks who may be unaware. Some that I'm thinking of are like socioculturally attuned family therapy, or as y'all refer to as SCAFT, or also ambient. So we'll start with SCAFT. I'm curious, would y'all be able to speak a little bit on what SCAFT is?
Well, SCAFT is an overarching framework of socioculturally attuned family therapy that can be applied to any model of therapy or an integration of models of therapy. And it's based on third order thinking, which is a way of connecting the dots between what's happening in the larger social environment and people's lived experience, the very physiology of their bodies, the ways interacting. Um, and it brings in a power perspective, recognizing that in our society, um, what is valued, uh, standards and expectations about what it means to be uh, in relationship, what it means to be working as a professional or whatever. All of those are shaped by power processes that value some ways of being and knowing more than others and result in material uh, disparities that have very real consequences in people's lives. And so SCAFT is a way of taking very abstract concepts like culture, social location, and power, and making them practical to say, how do I keep the very concepts that are so important to the field of family therapy over the decades? How do I keep those but integrate in a practical way an expanded perspective?
Absolutely, I appreciate that. How about ambient?
Yeah, so that's the practical way. So then we thought, okay, so if socioculturally attuned family therapy is a trans theoretical it's a trans theoretical framework. So you could apply it to teaching, you could apply it to clinical practice, you could apply it to any profession, honestly. But then when we said, okay, when the rubber hits the road, what does it look like? How do we, how can we, what is a guide or a way in which we can um, work in this way, right? With third order thinking and third order practice. So we developed ANVIET as an acronym, and it's ANVIET, ANVIET. And so ANVIET stands for attune, A, and then N is name, V is value, I is interrupt, E is envision, and T is to transform. So when we think as a therapist, we think, okay, what does it mean to attune to clients in the way that reflect the sociocultural lens, this kind of this attunement? What does it mean to be to have that, right? That perspective. I don't know if y'all could help me out with attunement. It's so critical to what we're talking about here. But then after we are tuning all the way through our practice, but then naming what has been we name injustices. We help clients name injustice, and what does that really look like? How does that affect them individually and interpersonally and in their communities? Value. How do we value what has not been valued by society, given larger dominant discourses? And how do we interrupt or intervene in ways that that are helpful in disrupting these problematic patterns or discourses in people's lives? E is envisioning what is possible and working with couples to individuals, families to expand the lens to what is possible. And then transforming is really getting to that place of helping them to they themselves can begin to think in a third order way and to transform their realities in ways they couldn't when their ways of thinking and being felt more constrained. But I feel like I need more help in articulating it because we do apply ANVIET across all the major models of family therapy in our book. So that will become evident to the reader as well.
Well, and I just think envy is such a key part of understanding socioculturally attuned family therapy. And so like it's really helpful to have that context and then to be able to read it within the text and see like how that attunement comes up or how that transformation comes up or even that interrupting in a really respectful way that values the clients and their location, but also uh, like allows for that readjustment of that power um, to to be able to be facilitated. So I think that's like
Right.
so key, right?
No,
And
I
the
agree. I'm sorry. And
sure.
then we also have so many case examples
Yeah.
across the whole book, right? Is that what you were going to say, Carmen, that we bring it to life?
So you have to read the book to see how do you actually apply these guiding practices across all the different models that are central to the field of family therapy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and it does it just so well, right? And so I don't know. A subtle plug for the maybe a not so subtle plug for reading the book because it just does do it really well, very well articulated. So I'm curious specifically. I was able to read the first book when it came out, the first edition, uh, and it really kind of introduced these concepts, right? And then the second edition had such a huge content add of pulling in outside voices of how folks are integrating it into their practices, right? And not just like marriage and family therapy practices, but like you said, it's kind of like across all different divisions of like work and existence and those sorts of things, pulling it into their lives and their lived experiences. I know in the third book, we've talked a bit about how there's a new chapter on assessment and how to integrate that into assessment, or there's a new chapter, or I think 27 new contributors total, right? There's also supplementary material for instructors. I'm curious, like, what other things that you would want us to know about this third edition that make it like that value add? Um, just knowing how the first and the second, so much content was added, what's added from the second to the third?
Yeah, I think that you're right. That assessment chapter, and we've updated it. So many ideas, and all the models are updated. But I think the most important thing is just acknowledging how much growth there's been, how many new voices, and extended ideas there are now, even since the second edition, and our desire to bring and integrate those new voices into the book, and with the understanding that this is an ongoing process. There hopefully will be many, many more voices, some that use what our ideas, some that disagree with us, some that whatever, but that this is a vibrant living topic that has now really captured people, and we are trying our best to include more and more voices in this work, so we give a broader sense of what's happening in the field.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about the book. It's always wonderful talking with y'all, but it's also really wonderful hearing how the work that y'all are doing is like able to be directly impacting clients, right? I think that was something that I felt early on in my like educational journey. And then now as I'm like beginning my clinical, like my postgraduate clinical journey, I pull this book off my bookshelf like all the time of how do I utilize this theory that the client is really receptive to in a way that actually like is going to serve them well in their social context, and help speak some of the languages that they need me to be speaking, right? How as a clinician can I help facilitate that conversation so that they can grow? And so it's really helpful to have that uh, be like done so practically, so accessibly, and then also just, I mean, obviously wonderful talking to the three of y'all as always. So,
It's great
anything
to
else
talk
that
to
you'd
you.
want to leave with the audiences with?
No, just glad that it's useful and it's music to our ears that you're using it as a clinician, and knowing that this book is for seasoned clinicians as well as brand new clinicians, and seasoned therapists as well as newer therapists. So thank you, and thank you for your support and for talking with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.